understanding of the meaning of the phrase opening the womb is pivotal, it seems to me, to understanding the meaning of the entire Bible and the deceptions of the Nephilim story. In Exodus 13:12, YHWH says that everything that's firstborn is to be set apart to him. He claims all firstborns. He destroys the firstborns of Egypt and leaves the firstborns of Israel untouched. But this applies not only to the humans, but also to the cattle, a generalized term including not only bovines, but the domesticated animals, herd animals that are used for food and clothing and so on, including sheep. This is very important in that the story of Dolly the sheep has biblical echoes, and it made such a splash perhaps in part because of that. The first animal to be cloned and publicized in a widely mass media fashion was almost a cow, or it was almost the offspring of cattle, as we know them, the ones that with horns and that we milk and so on, and that are the version of the biblical god, like the golden calf. But they were beaten to the punch by just barely, a few weeks, by the people who cloned Dolly the sheep. And this was important because firstborns and cloning and opening the womb are all associated in the Bible. I've just found this more recently, and I've suspected the aspects of it, which I've talked about earlier in other videos. But to open the womb means to be born, to come out of the womb. So, when, in the cases of people like Rachel and Leah, it said that the Lord opened her womb, this comes directly, or it's referenced later on in Exodus 13:12, and it means the Lord came out of her womb. And the same with both Leah and in Rachel's case, it's God came out of her womb, Elohim, YHWH first for Leah and then Elohim for Rachel, but Leah also bears one, or more than one child, who's from Elohim. So this is giving birth to God in the fullest sense of the word. Not even half Leah and half God, but God. Or whether it comes out of Leah or Rachel, this is God being born from them. This is astonishing that nobody talks about this stuff. It is absolutely central to the genealogies and the purposes of the gods of the Bible, and ultimately of Jesus. I just can't believe that this isn't talked about. I don't know, it's a shocker to I see this there and then hear it mentioned so little, because to open the womb means that actually before, when they were infertile, the women were prepared for this, because people like Sarah who find that they can't have their own children then say, okay, Abraham, have the child with your handmaiden, and I'll say it's my child. So they're having children that aren't genetically theirs and claiming them as their own. So they're prepared for what appears to be, when they have their own children, as if it's some sort of reward. You allowed someone else to have a child for you, which you claimed, and then you get to have your own. But no, it's not that either. So both Abraham and Sarah are having a child that is genetically not theirs when they have Isaac. Okay, because it's Elohim who's coming out of the womb, unaltered, genetically the same, a clone. Same thing with Leah and Rachel's children. And Leah and Rachel are prepared for not having, or at least Rachel is, because she has someone else's, she has children that are not hers or her at all. They're just Jacob's and the handmaiden's children. And then she eventually has one that is Elohim's child. But they're prepared for this by first being infertile and then claiming children that are not genetically theirs. Now, the decoy story of all of this is the Nephilim story. It's the exact opposite. Rather than divine clones, we have fallen angel, that is watcher, human hybrids. Okay? Half of one thing and half of the other, which is the exact opposite of what's actually said, as I can see it, in the Bible, what actually happens. Okay, so you have people made in God's image. They could very well be cloned. And the lineage of Jesus charts the lineage of all these people who were divine clones. One of these lineages starts with Adam, the other one starts with Abraham. And it starts with Abraham because that's the point with Isaac, where the divine lineage is reintroduced into the succession of generations. So you have a guy who's not actually, he's just claiming and passing on his name to the lineage, but not his genes. The Nephilim are the exact opposite, and they are about the struggle. When you face something big, and this giant, the word giant, you can easily search in the Book of Enoch. It comes up readily, but there is no mention of the word Nephilim in the Book of Enoch. Okay. When people hybridize, ironically, they're making this unholy, unnatural hybridization of two stories when they talk about the supposed role of what they call the Nephilim and the Book of Enoch giants in the Bible. Because there are, as far as I can see it, no Book of Enoch style giants in the Bible. There are no 4,500 foot tall offspring of angels and humans in the Bible. All the big people, the tall people in the Bible are offspring of a specific people. They have a single ancestor, like the Anakim are the sons of Anak. That's why they're called that, and they are very tall people. And the Raphaim and the Nephilim, as I would see it, would have names of similar origin. They are named after one progenitor. That means they cannot be the same as the offspring of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, because in the Book of Enoch, the Watchers as a group go down and all marry various mortal women, a large number of them all at the same time. So all the offspring of the Watchers are from different parents. They're not descendants of a single person who's the name of a tribe, a progenitor of a tribe, as they are in the Bible. It's the opposite. The biblical people have one ultimate parent, father, and he lends his name to the entire tribe. That's not the case in the Book of Enoch. Also, of course, the Book of Enoch ones are impossibly large, and they're a parody, they're a mockery of the meaning of stature in the Bible. The Bible says in various ways that as a nation, you can defeat a nation mightier than you. The word mighty is used there. With individuals, the word mighty is never used. There's no such thing as a mighty giant in the Bible. People may be tall, they may be strong, they may be able to carry massive, heavy arms and armor, but they are not mighty. They are not described in the individual sense as being mighty. In multiple cases, the people supported by YHWH are called mighty. YHWH himself is called mighty. And they can win, even against bigger and stronger people. The ultimate story of this is, of course, David and Goliath. And what it means is that no matter how big your foe is, if you have YHWH or perhaps in some instances Elohim on your side, you will win. And that's the narrative purpose of having unusually tall people as opponents in the land of Canaan when the Israelites come to take the land from them. The Book of Enoch story is exactly the opposite. The incredibly huge, 4,500 foot tall, not just 7.5 to 13 and some feet tall like they're described with the actual measurements given in the biblical stories. Enemies come and they wipe out, they utterly destroy. They always win, and they are scapegoats. So the Book of Enoch story is about being the victim and blaming these incredibly big things for it. Whereas in the Bible you have people only somewhat bigger, maybe up to double the size of the height of the Israelites, and they are always defeated. So to be a very tall person who's a foe of the Israelites is synonymous with losing the battle in the Bible. Those people always lose, and they are given names associated with that to some extent, because Rephaim in some of its meanings means powerless, or the dead, or people who are on the losing side. Exact opposite of the Book of Enoch meaning. In Psalm 127, it talks about children being like arrows in a quiver for a warrior. They're a good thing to have. They are part of a reproductive war. And this seems to me is actually absolutely central to the struggle in the Bible, in which you start with perhaps 70 sons of God are related, and they do the initial creation. And then the Bible is the story of two manifestations of one God struggling to gain supremacy over all the others and all of their peoples. So you end up with a situation where you have a polytheistic system, and how do you get from there to just one God expressed in two manifestations, or two gods taking over everything? Well, cloning is absolutely central to that, because you want to have a God who can have the attributes of all the religions you want to replace. And for that, you can't have just one, because you need him to appeal to different populations and different people with different upbringings and cultures. So you give the attributes of all these other gods, a few here and a few there, to different versions of the same God. And this is what Jesus is. There are 4 versions of his ministry, 4 stories, 4 gospels, I think, because he had to replace a number of different gods, and you want to appeal to different people. So you start with one guy who's essentially genetically the same, but has a slightly different pattern of events and things that he does in order to appeal to various different people. So they're the 4 Gospels, but not only those. There are also, in 3 of the 4 Gospels, the story of Jesus Barabbas, the man who's set free when Jesus is sent to the cross. And they are of varying degrees of criminality. One is a murderer, whereas on the other end, one could just be a political prisoner who hasn't even done anything wrong, much like Jesus himself. So there could actually be more like 7 versions of Jesus in the Gospels. And each time I look at this, of course, the numbers seem to get a little bit bigger, and that's probably by design. So the whole story then is a story of one or two gods gradually replacing the others by divine birth, of interbreeding with humans, and the story of the lineage of people to whom the divine seed is repeatedly reintroduced, culminating with Jesus born of Mary. But Mary, I don't think, actually has her lineage mentioned. There are various people, like the handmaids with Leah and Jacob, who don't have to have their lineage mentioned because they weren't part of that divine lineage. They only took part when they became involved somehow as surrogate parents for the people who did have the divine lineage or were starting it. And this might be something to do with how the Nephilim function as well.